Hi, welcome to the January 29th, 2021 Club Cubase Google Hangout. I'm going to do a quick audio test and make sure everything is coming through on my end, on my monitoring computer. Okay, that sounds like it's coming through fine. So if you have not attended a Club Cubase Google Hangout before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field, and you could also just get to the point, and you could also send questions in advance to clubcubase at Steinberg .de. We did a little before Christmas. We did a little Zoom, get together after the last hangout before Christmas, and we had a lot of people that wanted to do that. So we'll try to do that for the last hour of the hangout today. So we'll go for maybe about 3 hours and then kind of cut over to the Zoom, and I will go ahead and I'll just kind of open up my Zoom invite here, and if you guys want to see it on my screen, you can do that, and I'll try to enter it in on the comments field as well. So let's say so if you wanted to look at some of the meeting invitation here, so I will go ahead and quickly, if you wanted to, I'll see if I could paste over kind of the meeting ID and password here. So bear with me just for a second, and I'll email this to myself so I could get it on my computer. And we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. But while I do this, if people want to quickly introduce themselves and tell us where you're from. My name is Greg Undo. I'm doing this from Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. So, and I work for Yamaha Corporation of America as a product specialist. So I'll just go ahead and email this to myself really quick, and I'll post the IDs or the Zoom invite. So, and we'll see if we could do this a couple of different times. So I'll just send this over to my other computer quickly. Like many of you, I'll have my children my son is at home, so you may hear him scream, and he may get very excited because it's Friday and will be done for the week. So I apologize for any interruptions that may occur. So if you want to go ahead and ask some questions in the comments field, and again, you could just let us know who you are, where you're from. If this is your very first hangout, that information is always great. So we will get started here in just a couple minutes. As we have a lot of questions that come in, we may not have the time to, my ability to answer questions may not, excuse me, may be slower than the ability to answer all of the questions. So if we could just kind of try to get the questions, it may take me a little time to catch up. So if we could try to avoid maybe having the same question repeated over and over, if you don't actually see my answer immediately, just know that I will try to get to it. And we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. We'll let some people get logged in. So I'm going to just copy the Zoom info, and maybe if someone else could copy it and paste it throughout the Hangout, that would be helpful as well. So let me just see if I'll go ahead and paste that into the chat field. All right, just using my other computer here. Okay, so I just kind of pasted that in. So maybe if other people, as we do this, but let's go ahead and see quickly who's on a Hangout, and we'll get started since we have kind of a shorter 3-hour Hangout today. And we hope that people can make it over to the Zoom. Be great to meet everyone. Okay, so let's see who's on. So we see Salvador or Sal. Good to see you on the Hangout from Tampa. All right, so we see Jay from Connecticut. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we have Brianna from Yotown. Okay, so let's see. We have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. Okay, so we have Sir Robert from Atlanta. Okay, we have Terry Dean from Holland. All right, so we have Uno from snowy Finland. I think we're due some snow maybe starting on Sunday here. All right, so we have Long Island. All right, so we have John Costigan from Kenosha. All right, so let's see who else is on. All right, so we have Tim from Mission Viejo. He was on our last little Zoom get together. All right, so we have Daryl from Fort Washington, Maryland. So basically right across the river from me. And I'm in Alexandria, just a little between Old Town and Mount Vernon. All right, so we have Pablo from Galicia, España. We have Taylor Sapp from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. We have Jan from CubaseIndex.com, where you could actually search for all the topics that we cover on Hangouts. Thank you for doing that site, Jan. All right, so we have London, UK. We have Northern California, Braunschweig, Germany, from Nils. I probably said that wrong. All right, so we have Nigeria. Okay, so we have Brian K. Barrett. Good to see you. We have Johnny from Pittsburgh. All right, so we have Charles Mallory from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have South Wales. Another person from Atlanta. All right, we have Jazz Dude on a Hangout. Great to see everyone. All right, so we have Xandor WBY, who's new to the Hangout. All right, so we have someone from Nyack, New York, Racine, Wisconsin. All right, so we have Matthias from Hamburg, Germany. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me just make this a little larger because I don't see well. All right. All right, just make sure I'm starting from the same spot on both. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, hey Greg, in logical question. Hey Greg, in logical editor, how would you extract only the bass notes of a chord progression to create a bass track? Thanks. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'll just do quickly a new project. Okay, so I'll just quickly kind of start off with a chord track. Okay, so let's just... Okay, so let's say I just have quickly some, I'll just add a sound. So I'll just add a quick patch here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just drag these. So we want to take kind of extract the bottom notes from these. So I'll select, and I'm just going to drag these down to the MIDI track, and we'll glue these all together quickly. Okay, so if we wanted to extract the lowest note from these, okay, so let's just make it a little bigger for everyone so everyone can see. All right, so we have these chords and we want to extract like the lowest note. So let's come over here to our MIDI, to our logical editor. And first we want to just say extract. And we want to say type is equal to note, and we want to say, I think we choose context variable. And we're going to say maybe inside range, and we'll just say lowest pitch here. So as we do this, we'll say lowest pitch, and I'll just take this away. And what it's done now is it's taken that part, and now as I want it to, let's see if maybe I had everything, maybe if I had something selected. Okay, wait, I know what I could do. All right, so that was the lowest pitch that was extracted, but if I want to do this for the chords, so let's come and so we'll say position in chord. So here we're going to type 0. And if I did this correct, it will create that part. So let me just make sure I have this selected. I think that would do it. And I could also just, let's say if I just do an insert exclusive. Just try the extract one more time. So, and then as you can see right here, let's take a look at this particular part. We just try to change that value there. So generally that's what you do. So you just say the context variable, and then you could just say inside range or outside range and just choose position in the chord or lowest in chord. Let's see if we could do this as well. So we'll just say lowest in chord. And generally that does a bit, I'm probably not doing something right. It's a great way to start off a Hangout. All right, so I'll see if I can come back to that. But if you kind of play around with that, you could choose to just do the lowest in chord. So say if I wanted, I'll see if I could copy the very first one here. So let's say if I select So you could kind of play around with that. So I'll just go ahead and move on. All right, so let's see who else is on the Hangout. So a question, working in Cubase 11 on a fast i9 processor, 128 gigs of RAM and SSD drives, I assume SSD. Why does Cubase need so much time to load normal projects? Is Steinberg working on that issue to fasten it up? Well, sometimes, it takes, depending on your project, you may still have a lot of memory to work with and a fast processor, but, it still has to load all of your samples into the memory. So it really could depend upon, how fast your sampler is loading up the samples that's kind of outside of Cubase, because once the sampler is loading stuff up, at that point, what it's doing is, that's in like how fast the samples are loading up. So if you're kind of doing projects, it could be because, different samples are loading up in the background. That's often what takes the longest period of time, not necessarily, Cubase loading it, but Cubase says, bring back the instrument to this, and how long that instrument takes to actually load is kind of often the bigger variable. Okay, so my question is, can you show us a quick way to create 16 MIDI tracks, sending channels 1 through 16 to send to an external MIDI device? Is there a template for this scenario? So let's just come over here. Let's just do a new project, or I'll just start this, just undo this. All right, so let's say if I want to add, I'll just say let's add MIDI track. And let's add 16 and add the track. So at this point, if I wanted to take all these and reset the MIDI port, let's say I want to go to my Steinberg UR24C, I could just hold down the Alt or Option plus Shift key, and that will automatically just set those. So we see that this is going to be MIDI channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through 16. And so you could select all of the tracks and hold down Alt or Option plus Shift and choose, what is the MIDI output port, the destination, or the input port, just by clicking there. Okay, so we see from David Walker question. Hi, Greg. When I import an OMF file, all the audio shows up as 44.1 24-bit, but it plays the audio too slow and low pitch, 1 to 2 semitones flat. If I could make the 44.1 play 48K, it might correct, but how? So, if you're getting, it could be whoever is generating the OMF is maybe getting the sample rates kind of messed up. So let's say if we record, generally it's like slightly more than a semitone out of tune. So, if it's kind of in between, then that's a pretty good indication. So when you do this, there could be a preference that you should check. So if we come over here, we could just say, the first thing I would do is try to import it with this particular preference. So if we say, so you go to your preferences, editing, audio, and you can say on import audio files, you could choose to use settings. And at this point, you could convert to project settings and copy the project folder if needed. So I would try doing that first. It could be that maybe, it was just exported at the wrong sample rate, and that happens quite a lot. So if you have an audio file that was, done at the wrong sample rate, you could go to Shift S, which is the project setup. You could also access this directly from the project menu. And if we have an audio file here, you could just switch the sample rate to 48K. And then you'll get messages if you want to keep the audio at the same position. So if you have an audio file in there, and then that will reconvert the sample rate. But if you're, check with whoever you're getting the OMF from, because it's probably, that's probably the actual real problem. So if you could solve that, that would be best. But you could go through and just try changing your sample rate in the project setup to 48K, and I think that would take care of it for you. Okay, so let's go ahead through some. All right, we see it's snowing in Stockholm as well. Lots of snow everywhere. All right, so we have Croatia present. Hi, Greg J. from Connecticut. Past week, I've installed, uninstalled, and reinstalled Nuendo complementary software offered on Nuendo page header, but no licenses work. Also, where can I find the T-Guitar demo? So, let's see if we could just, I'll take a look. So some of the, so I'm not sure which exact Nuendo complementary software you're referring to, but if we go to the Steinberg Download Assistant, I'll just come here. So we'll show you kind of what's included with the Nuendo license. So if we come over here, we could just say, so if we're on Nuendo 11, these are all the different parts that are available that are included in the Nuendo 11 license. So if we see complementary products, so we see the Immerse with the VST dashboard. So that's not going to be licensed with Nuendo. I believe that's a separate product. So, you may want to, I believe that is a separate product from Immerse. But let's go quickly to the online shop. And I think, so just go to the website quickly here. Read all my emails here. All right, so let's say if we go to Nuendo and then we choose to, let's say if we go to the shop area. So when you come over here, this is where you can do it. But I don't think that you're gonna have, the Immerse. So let's just say if I want to go to the complementary products. So if we come over here to the Immerse, so this is going to be, I think, a separate product. So if you wanted to, just to buy that, that's a separate $189 to get that functionality. So it's not part of the license. But let's go ahead and so if you want to go to the T-Guitars, so let's take a look at, so if we just go to the T-Guitar here, so I'm not sure if there's a trial version of this. So let's just, so I don't see a particular trial version. So, not every, but let me just see if there's because usually a lot of times there may be, I'll just look here. So there may not be a trial version, just like T-Guitar is not actually done by Steinberg. We host it on our Howling marketplace, but it's not necessarily a Steinberg product. So sometimes the trial versions can be up to the actual companies, that handle that. So. All right. Well, Johnny D. Swing says, I need to take Tylenol to deal with you guys. No Tylenol needed. This is the fun part of my week. All right. All right. So we see Sam from Milwaukee. All right. Okay, we have a question I keep meaning to ask. How we set up to switch between soloed tracks? All right, so there's a couple of different ways if you want to deal with soloing, and there's different schools of thought, and that kind of can herald back to different console design. So let's say if I have, a project here and I wanted to solo tracks, some people envision soloing, meaning that you can't solo multiple tracks simultaneously. So let's say if I have a number of tracks soloed, and then I only wanted to solo the bass at this point. I think if you just hold down the Control or Command, you could just kind of double click on the solo. So if you had multiple parts that were soloed, so just double click, and then you could just solo that particular track and then hear it in context. So just Control or Command plus double clicking on the solo, and that will overwrite if you have multiple elements soloed. So we have a question: is there a way to detect the sample and bitrate of a file when importing it into Cubase? So generally, when you actually click, let's see if it's indicated here. So, okay, so you could see it in the pool window. So if we go to media and let's go to open pool window, here you could determine kind of the actual, you will see kind of the bit rate and that information for the particular file. So we can see it's a WAV file, it's 24-bit mono, it's 44.1. So you can see kind of the file info directly from the actual, project there. And I think that you could, let me just see if there's, sometimes I thought that you might be able to see it directly in, just see if it's maybe in something that's not shown. But yeah, so just kind of go to the pool window. So as you go to import your files, you could just kind of come right over here and just look in media, and in the pool window you could see all the information for the particular files right there as soon as they're in your project, and you can see them all together. All right, so we have Brian K. Barrett. He's good to see him. He's been a Cubase and Windows user since he met me back in 2006. All right, great to see you on Hangout. All right, good to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right, so we have Samuel Walker from Tampa, Florida as well. So a couple people from Tampa. All right, question. Can Hallian 6 re-pitch a drum loop similar to tape algorithm instead of time stretch, so it speeds up the sample or slows down the BPM, makes the pitch higher and lower like old sampler? So yeah, it can do that kind of by default. So let's go ahead and I'll just add an instance of Hallian here. Okay, and let's just go directly to our drum loop. So let me just All right, so I'll just drag that in, and now as we play, you could just have that play. And that will automatically just kind of speed up the sampler, slow down to BPM, and makes the pitch brighter and lower. You could also do this with the sampler track. So if you go to, your sampler track here, I could take just the file and so that's how you could do that in either Hallian 6 or a sampler. Well, that's kind of the default behavior. All right. So once again, so we see Xander's first hangout. Welcome. We hope to see you on future hangouts. All right. So we have Timothy from Nyack, New York. Good to have you on a hangout. Terry Dean wants people to hit the like button. Okay. And occasionally my chat field will jump on me, which it just did. So let me see if I can go back and find my spot. Okay. Okay, so we see Watt G-Base, first hangout for me. Been Cubasing since Windows 95. Love it. Running 11 Pro now. Welcome to the hangout. Glad to have you. So hi, Greg. I have a question, please. Is there a way to see the BPM of a project without the need to open it? Even on import audio from projects, is there a way to see the tempo BPM? So I don't know a way to see it without opening up the project. I know some people will name the project or include the BPM within the name. So you could do that. You probably, let's see if we go to Media Bay and we look for projects here. So I don't think this would be kind of enabled by default, but if we choose to, look only for projects, and let me just come to where I have some of my projects here. So you could, here, within particular projects, say, that you could probably see a BPM, but unless you specifically wrote that in as metadata for the project, it's not going to be included. So you may have to open a project. So you could open the project and not activate it and see. So if I come here, let's say I wanted to go to this project, I could say, do you want to activate? And we'll say no. And then let's see if I activate this now. So the tempo isn't indicated until you actually activate the project. So so I don't know of a way to do that. I'll think about it some more in the back of my head. All right, so we have from SM Entertainment Cambodia. Would you please show me how to master? So a lot of times I use Cubase for my multi-track and Wavelab, but if you want to see it inside of Cubase, I could show you a couple things. So let's say, and mastering can mean so many different things to different people. So many times, a true mastering engineer would want a dedicated mastering environment, and that's, completely understandable. Sometimes people will consider mastering kind of like just taking your 2-track mix and being able to process it. So what I would do if you wanted to master inside of Cubase, first thing I would, check out Wavelab, because I think that's a phenomenal mastering environment. But if I had to master kind of inside of Cubase, I would start working with, so let's say if I go to my main area here, one of the plugins I would have open just as analysis would be my supervision plugin. So let's say I would have this open just to see what frequencies, what my phase, my levels, my loudness. So I could come over here and get a good sense of visually what's going on. If I wanted to do some processing on particular files, so many people would just do, if I wanted to take this, I would do maybe kind of some surgical EQ with, so say like in this, I'd probably want to get rid of the low end, and we could choose, like I want this to be a shelf, to get rid of the low end there. And we could choose, and let's say I want to take this particular band. And what's cool about this is you could actually come here and just, as we solo. So there's like the frequency I want to kind of tame in the kick. So I'm only hearing what I'm adjusting here. And we could also do adjustments on like mid side. So if I say I only wanted to, let's say take band 5, and I want to do, and I wanted the edges to be a little brighter. You could also come over here to the Imager plugin. And this would allow you to kind of take different frequencies and make them wider. So if I want the bass to not be so kind of wide, but I want to add more space, and a lot of people would run in like a limiter or a maximizer. So you could kind of start off maybe with something that's like really floppy low end. And our phase looks good, frequencies look good. So those are a couple things I would do if I was approaching kind of mastering inside of Cubase. But if you want to see it in Wavelab, let us know. All right, so we have Sir N68. All right, so we have Ali from Iran. Good to see you on a Hangout. All right, so we have JVI from Amsterdam. Good to see you on a Hangout. All right, so we have Jan from Norway, David from Slovakia. That's where my grandparents immigrated from. All right. All right, so we have Holland as well. All right, so let's kind of keep going on. All right, so question. In the last meeting, someone asked about saving the silence when stripping silence. Could you have reversed the threshold limits, switching the low and high threshold? Yeah, someone had kind of sent another suggestion about like an approach to like stripping silence. So let me just. So they wanted kind of like almost the opposite of stripping silence. So let me just jump back to like if I wanted to take, let's say maybe a drum track here. So let's say our snare track. And I will just take this. And my Cubase didn't like that, so give me a second here. All right, I'm just going to reboot my computer really fast, so just bear with me. And if you guys hang out, I'll be back in just a minute. Sometimes I have too many things going on for the Hangouts. I'm going to go ahead and see if I could get my computer rebooted here. Let me just... And I'll be right back on the Hangout. Bear with me. My laptop. All right, so I think we're back. Sorry about that. I'm just going to do a quick, make sure my audio is working, test. Okay, so. Okay, so so someone else had suggested like a way. So if I wanted to take just my snare track to get rid of the to do kind of an unstrip silence, kind of the opposite of detect silence, that you could maybe duplicate the track and then do a detect silence. Let me just render this as a separate file quickly. So I'll just choose to bounce selection and replace, but that you could do a detect silence here and then just kind of flip and reverse the phase between the two. So I didn't get a chance to try it out, but that could be another way. But there isn't kind of a reversing of the threshold, unfortunately. Okay. All right, so we see Stephen McCormack from Buffalo, New York. Welcome to the Hangout. Okay. So we have a question from Pablo. Question, can you put the Cubase Notepad in black and the letters in white? I think it's still going to be dependent. So say if we come here to the Notepad, so I think this will be the default, but maybe if you run your computer in dark mode, so you might be able, it might switch if your computer is in dark mode. So I know that there's different ways for Macs and PC to be in dark mode, and that may switch it, but I don't know of a way to automatically kind of, invert the colors, but it may do that by default in black mode. So question, is it possible to say presets for automation? Okay, so I don't, I'm not sure if, I haven't heard of a concept of presets for automation. I know some people will want to have maybe different curves. So, the automation is going to be kind of tied in. So if you have gone through and done, let's say different curves here. So a lot of people don't necessarily save presets because it could be, you know, a preset for like a range of automation could be, you know, not so useful, you know, in a different song, you know. So I haven't had that request, but you know, but if it's, so I'm not sure if it's just like I wanted to be able to save curves and be able to, you know, do that for, you know, it's often kind of done in EDM music. So, but you know, so, but I don't know a way to save kind of different automation points. So, and so second question, is it possible to set maximum and minimum for automation lane? So one thing that you could do easily, let's say if I have like a lot of extreme automation going on, something like this, and if I wanted to kind of make that a little more, let's say, amenable, you know, you could select the automation here and just kind of compress it, and that will kind of set like the top range of your automation. There isn't a way necessarily to restrict it when writing the automation because that could be different depending upon control surfaces. But you know, if you wanted to have this same result, you know, select the automation with like the range tool. And then if you go to the right center edge, you could expand or kind of compress the thresholds of the automation to kind of get you what you want. So question 3, do you let Cubase devs know if there are any ideas from us for updates? I'm constantly kind of in touch with the team, so they have really long lists for me that probably annoys them. You know, it's like every time we see Greg, we just have this huge list, and you know, so yeah, and that's how we get a lot of the new features that you see in Cubase 11, and you know, and you know, they have access to all this data as well. So, okay. So we have a question from Jan at cubaseindex.com. Why can I not create versions of tempo and transpose track? I mean, chord track could be created versions, or did I misunderstand something? So if we have tempo tracks, so I will add a tempo track to this particular project. And I'll just close the automation, make it a little easier. So I'll turn on my tempo track and let's say, okay, this is my tempo. You can have different versions of tempo track. So you could just say new version and you could have a completely, so you already do have the ability of working with track versions on tempo tracks. So you could come here and just navigate between. Let's see, for transpose tracks, I'm not sure if I've tried that. So I don't think we could do track versions on transpose tracks. But yeah, but you can definitely do it on tempo tracks. So if you're looking to do it on tempos, just kind of let us know. And that should already be available. We'll give you that feature free for attending the Hangout today. All right, so we see from Mark Rabin, I have a release scheduled for February 11th, 2021, redacted, all made on Cubase 11 Pro. Thank you, Greg and Cubasers. That's wonderful. It's a big accomplishment to get a release done. Congratulations, and let us know if there's links and stuff that we could listen to it. That'd be great. I'll try to put it in my calendar after the Hangout to look for it. And congratulations on the completion. It's a big deal to get a release done. So I see many famous musicians that almost have like, you know, I've heard it referred to as completion anxiety. So getting something done is great. Congratulations. Okay, so you see a question, is this chat the best option to ask questions, or is there some sort of queue? So, you know, just ask in the chat field, and that'll be... Okay. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Question. Any way to delete plugins from the inspector or the mixer on the bottom panel? Just a way you do it from the mixer window at the backspace. Why backspace does not work the same. So let's give it a shot here. So say I go to my inserts. All right, so if I have this, I would select it, and then let's say backspace, that gets rid of it there, like you said. All right, so I will put that back. So let's go over here. Let's say we look at our inserts here. So I see the sub kick, so select it. So backspace seems to work there. So you may have to, so I'm just selecting it here and then hit backspace. That will do it. If I undo that, so that seems to work there. Let's select the track and go to the inserts. So select this end, or the insert effect rather, here. And I see backspace doesn't work there. Let me just, because that may just be opening the particular file. So here that kind of clicks, but one trick that you could do that a lot of people don't know is you could just take that insert and just kind of drag it away. So just drag it to nothing, if you will. So you see that, and you could just drag it, and you could do this in the main inserts area here as well. So say, okay, I just wanted to put a filter on that, just select it and drag it to kind of nowhere, and that will get rid of it. But I'll kind of mention that, and it might be that that opens it up from the inspector, but I can see where the behavior should be, you know, would be desirable to be consistent. Okay, good to see Agent K helping people out and our normal people. All right, so we see Bob Houston from Central Illinois in a Hangout. All right, good to see Tan May on the Hangout. So we see a question from Tame. Is there a way to adapt to Zoom Quantize in the key editor like the main window? So I don't think it makes as much sense in the MIDI editors, just because, like, you know, like when you're kind of zoomed in, so let's say if I'm here, you know, like as I'm moving stuff, you know, kind of positioning it, you know, we could have, you know, it snap to different grids. So here we could say, you know, I want it to snap to bar. So as I would, you know, move an event, this would automatically snap it to the bar here. So we could think of the, you know, this grid as being more for, you know, and we could choose to have it, you know, automatically adapt to zoom. So if I'm doing an edit here, you know, now we could have it snap to bar, but if I'm zoomed in more, you know, this will allow you to still continue to snap, but just at higher resolution. So we could do this kind of for the part globally, but if it's an actual MIDI part, you know, so let's say if I'm here, you know, I may want to, you know, quantize, you know, different parts where we're going to have kind of mixed rhythms. So let's say, okay, I want these to be quantized to half notes, but I want these notes to be, you know, quantized to 16th notes. Or if it's a drum editor, I may want to have, you know, these quantized, you know, my hi-hats quantized to 16th notes, but my kick and snare to quarter notes. So I think that as you zoom in, that it's not as applicable, you know, and maybe others think, you know, differently. but here I would want to be able to quantize kind of, I don't want, as I zoom in, to change the quantize value. So, I think for the snapping, the adapt to zoom kind of, makes sense on kind of moving like the whole part, kind of on the project window to the grid. But quantizing is not, you could have different values for each note or for different parts or for the selection. And I don't think that, I don't see it making, I wouldn't want it to be tied to my zoom level and have my quantizing, be affected and change based on the zoom level. But I can see where other people, if you think otherwise, I can see that, but I don't think it's as applicable for MIDI quantization. And I think on Tammy, I'm not sure if you're on one of the other Hangouts, but I did hear back. I spoke with, Team Z about their sample rate. I think you were asking about that earlier, and sample rate and bit depth. So they do everything at 32-bit, 44.1K. So good to see you on a Hangout, Tammy. Okay. Okay, so just had a quick question. So let's say, okay, so we have a question. I was searching for a way to select only the highest velocities in the piano roll. Is there a way to do that? Thanks. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so if I wanted to come here, we could choose, I think we could probably do this in a logical editor. So let's say we want to select, type is equal to note, and we could say value 2, which is the velocity. And we could say is, let's say is inside a range of 100 to 127. And so let's see if we could select this. So now it will select only the notes that have those velocity ranges that are specified. So you could set up, so that's a way that you could do that. And if you wanted to bring those velocities down, you could do that, but you could kind of just set the range, let's say 110 to 127, and hit apply. And then you'll see kind of fewer notes that will be included within that range. So, and let me just say, so that would be how I would do it. And then, so if you wanted to kind of regulate those particular velocities, you could do that. So let me know if that works for you. All right, good to see Gareth on a Hangout. All right, so we have someone from Pakistan. Welcome to the Hangout. Okay, shortcut to turn delay compensation on when hitting record or macro. All right, so let's just go to your key commands. So you could just kind of set it up under audio. You'll see constrained delay compensation. So you could assign a keyboard shortcut to that. So let's say if I wanted to do this, I'll just make a so just you could do it directly there. So audio constrained delay compensation. So you could just enable that through a keyboard shortcut. All right, so we have a question. What are some ways to improve overall navigation, specifically regarding zooming in and out horizontally, vertically with the laptop trackpad or mouse scroll wheel? So if you wanted to, what I generally do is, I could do just, most things with like G and H to zoom in and out, and then just Shift G and Shift H. So that Shift H, Shift G, and be able to kind of, work with that quite easily. So I could just say, okay, I wanted to zoom. And a lot of times, I will come over here and just use kind of the dedicated zoom tool. So if you're looking for something, very specific, you could just grab the zoom tool and say, okay, I want to zoom there. And then you could double click to where you were. But if you hold down, I think it's Control or Command, you could zoom vertically and horizontally and just double click to go right back to where you were. So you're like, oh, what's going on right here? And then that will just kind of blow it up, double click, and you're right back to where your zoom was. So I think that those are work pretty well. I know a lot of people will also just from the main kind of control window, if you could zoom kind of horizontally with the control key, but I don't think there's the equivalent with the mouse. That's with the hold down control key with the mouse scroll wheel. I don't think there's an equivalent, and we can navigate up or down, but I don't think there's a vertical zoom with like in that same function. But check out the zoom tool. I think it's kind of underutilized, and you could also come over here. There's like if you wanted to just take this, I think if you go to edit, that you could just do a zoom selection. So, that's a cool thing to do as well. So, if you wanted to, I think that's just like Shift S, so if you're like, oh, what's going on with this? I think it's, you get the keyboard shortcut here, So just Alt or Option S, and then you could zoom right back to where you were. And then, so anything that you have selected, you can say, oh, okay, I want to see what's going on right there. So just Alt or Option S, and then you could just, go right back. So, check out some of these other kind of zoom functions that are kind of in the program. And I think that might actually be faster and a bit more surgical for you. So John Dillinger says, never been here. Hello, is it worth watching for advanced productions? So it's whatever questions that people ask. If they're, advanced or simple, we, just sit here and we'll answer everything for you. All right. Okay, so a question from Bob. I have adjusted several vocal tracks with Very Audio. Do I have to flatten offline processing, and what does it do using... okay, so when we are doing kind of vocal process, and when we're doing Very Audio editing, we can come over here and we just have, let's say we're in our Very Audio, so we'll do our quick analysis of our vocal file here. Okay, so we'll just do this. So, when we see this, this is what the audio file is playing. Now, within Very Audio, if I choose to come over here and move notes, what this does is it's actually still playing the original file. When it gets to this point, it says, okay, play this down a half a step, and let's, come here and, flatten the vibrato. So what Cubase will do as it plays the file, it will kind of process all of those changes that you've made. So it'll say, okay, at this point, we're going to change the pitch of this segment. We're going to adjust the vibrato. We could adjust, the other aspects of the volume, all that good stuff. And Cubase will, like, as it just plays back, execute all those different commands. Now, if your project is running really heavy on your computer, what you could do is choose to flatten the real-time processing. And what that's going to do is to basically render those changes into the file so that Cubase plays back an audio file that is the result of all of the changes that you made into the very audio. And it doesn't have to calculate those different instructions in real time. So a lot of times it goes on so fast, you may not need to ever flatten it. So, if you're handing it, if someone sent you a vocal to tune, you may flatten it just to have the audio file, so that you could give them a standard audio file back and you say, yeah, I did my magic on it, but so that's when I would, that's what the flatten function does. So another question, how do I stop seeing missing files? So it could be that, if you start it with templates, sometimes people will delete a bunch of files on the project window, save as a template, and then they open it up and then they keep getting missing files messages. So if you have missing files messages in your project, I would go to your pool window and just right click, and you'll see this function, for remove missing files. Because what's happening many times is Cubase is saying, okay, within the project at one point there's these files, and it's still going to look for those files in case you needed to do an edit, or you're like, I really did like take 2 better than take 600. At that point, it'll do that. So. But if you just kind of erase the files, those files can still be referenced on a hard drive from the audio pool. So the pool is just kind of keeping a reference of all the files that have been used at one point in the project. So go to the pool, right click, and choose remove missing files. Excuse me. All right. All right, so we see Alexander Plasko lurking from Connecticut. We're good that you came out of lurking mode to say hi. So I see, hi Greg, this is from Gareth. I have a bug question just in case you have any knowledge of it. You know anything about Cubase not working properly with NVIDIA GTX graphics cards, assuming all drivers updated, etc. So I know that a lot of NVIDIA drivers, sometimes you may want to roll back or turn off the gaming functions, and that can make kind of a big difference. Probably someone like Jazz Dude might be able to give more information since he does a lot of computer setups, but a lot of times, having the latest drivers is maybe what you don't want to have. So I would, as I see Jazz Dude's already kind of chiming in. Thank you for that. Okay, so question from Lionel Thomas. Hi, Greg. Hope you are well. When I want to do note repeat on a hi-hat and groove agent, it's printing into a long MIDI note with the piano roll. When recording, how to do it the right way. Thanks. Some people can, if you're doing it with Groove Agent. So let me just get a Groove Agent track loaded here. Thank you for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. And I will go ahead and, if we want, we had pasted earlier for the Zoom session that will start in about an hour, 45 minutes. So, but I think we had the link in the chat field from earlier, but maybe someone could copy it because I'm kind of back behind. Let's see if I could put in my chat field again. Bear with me just for a second. Or getting this, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the link in one more time because I know that it will periodically disappear. Okay, I think Agent K just got it in. Okay, so when we have the full Groove agent, we do have kind of like note repeat stuff that could be implemented. So, you know, if you haven't seen this, I will just quickly load up. Okay, so let's say if I just come here. Okay, so what we could do, I may have to adjust my octaves on my keyboard, is we go in directly into kind of note repeat stuff. So say we go into click on the Perform tab, and let's go ahead and activate. So when we come, I could now, let's just, I may have to adjust my, just check what my controller is spitting out here. Okay. So now if I want to come here and play a particular note, so if I have, I guess I have that kind of mapped, but at this point you could choose to have your different note repeats kind of set up. Let me just see if I could. Okay. So let's say for, I'm going to, when I hit this particular note, I could come over here and let's say with my, so when I hit a D5 note, it will just kind of come and we'll say, okay, I want to do, let's say, like 16th note triplets. So when I hit the note, and let's say if I wanted this to be 32nd notes, so if I come here and okay, and I'll just come over here. Let's just change some velocity up. So, all right, so let me go ahead and just set my Groove agent to record back in to itself. So I will set my MIDI input to Groove agent 1. I'll just hit record. A little let me just get my Ranger track disabled. Bear with me just for a second. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Groove Agent track. Okay, so I will now, let's open up the Groove Agent. I'm going to trigger. Just okay, so I will just, all right, so I'm just going to say from, all right, so I have to kind of set up a different MIDI input controller for that. So let me see if I could. Let's duplicate the track and see. So now I'll have this set from my MIDI controller. Okay, so this one I want. So I don't have my MIDI controllers kind of set up to do that, but let me just let me just do this so I could draw the note in at the same time. Okay, so I want all right, so I'm just going to come here, put in so that should be okay, so I'm going to just put in and see if this kind of plays back. All right, because what it is doing is it's actually just kind of triggering that particular note as you do it. So it's recording this particular note. Now, if you wanted the snare to automatically be split, there's a couple ways of doing that. So let's say if I want it to go to this particular note, I can show you some ways of doing like some kind of note repeat function. So let's get rid of these notes. If you wanted to see it reflected in that, I could just say, okay, let's come here. I'm going to quantize that, and I want this to snap. So let's say I'm going to cut there, and I wanted this to, we'll just snap it at 16th notes. So I will split, and let's say if I wanted this to be 16th note triplets, starting here. So I'll just kind of come right over here. Let's say I'll glue these, and let's say at this point I want to snap to 16th note triplets, or let's just do 32nd notes, starting here. So if you wanted to just kind of cut, and so you could just say, okay, I want to take that snare. You could just kind of, choose to have one long note and then just cut it based on that if you wanted to see those notes actually reflect upon that. So, but otherwise it's just a MIDI note that's triggering kind of the playback. All right, sorry, that took a little while. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so you see, circling back to my first question, a logical editor preset to delete every note except the bass notes. That makes more sense. So let's give that a quick try. All right, let me just get it off of the... All right, so I'll just play some chords in. Okay, so let's come here and go back to our logical editor. So we go to look at our part there. So let's say I want to let's say we're going to take notes. All right, so say if I have this, we could say, let's see if this works. So we're going to say delete notes that are unequal to lowest pitch. And there you go. So you could try that. But let's also just say note number in chord. So let's say if I move these up, okay, so let's see if we could just do this. Yeah. All right, so if you wanted to keep the lowest note, so sorry I couldn't get it to work on the first time. So under function, choose delete. On your filter target, type is equal to note. And then you want to, for the second condition, you can set the Boolean condition to and. The context variable unequal to note number in chord 0, and that will just delete everything that's not the lowest note in the chord. So come here again, and you can see we have our chords here. Let's just do that, and that will delete it. So hopefully I redeemed myself from the first question. All right, so question, Greg, have you ever worked with any other DAWs besides Cubase? No, I haven't ever felt the need to. So I'm total idiot. I can't run any other DAWs. I mean, I know Nuendo, I know Wavelab, our instruments, but I never have felt the need to ever check out another DAW. Cubase seems to do everything that I need and way more. So we see, is there a way to detune a single note? Like there are 2 Gs, but I want 1 G detuned in melody in Serum. So you could do it with the VST 3.5 instrument. It has this capability. So, but many instruments, I'm not sure if Serum is a VST 3.5, so I'm inclined to say no. So realize that this is going to be kind of a limitation of that particular instrument and not of Cubase. So if I wanted to come here, let's say I'll just do a quick retro log, and I'll just do like a quick lead patch. All right. That's what wasn't what I had in mind. Let's okay, so say I was just going to come here and just, record one particular part. So say, so now that it's a VST 3.5 instrument, let's just double click, and I'll make this so I could just take like this particular note here, and if I want, I'll just turn off this particular function. So let's say, and then all I have to do is go to my expressions, to note expression, and then you could just kind of draw in, we'll select tuning, and as we just kind of draw in, I could say, okay, I want all the Gs to get slightly more sharp over time. And I could just kind of draw in if you want to. So now you could just, come here, and even if you wanted to just kind of draw in notes. So that would only affect the note G. So if you wanted to, just have your VST 3.5 instruments that allowed you to, just draw in those different tunings, you could do that directly here. So let's say if I just draw in one note, and if I wanted to, just come here and then I could say, okay, while that pans up, I want it to, or the pitch goes up, I want it to pan from one side to the other. So you could do stuff like that. So, and it's a limitation of Serum. If it doesn't do that, the capability is there, but it may not be supported. So check out like the Hallian Sonic SE, Pad Shop, or Retrolog for being able to do that. So again, when importing tracks from a project, is it possible to know the tempo? Do you know a workaround? Otherwise, I would have to open a project, which is very time consuming. So I don't know of a way to do it, but again, if you wanted to, if it's something that you need to do all the time, maybe just put the tempo in the name of the project. So lots of people do that. Okay, so I see a question. Hi, can you explain how to use the analyzer and how to use those information like correlation and change the mix regarding to those infos? I may not have a good kind of mix example, but let's go ahead and give it a try. See if we could. So let's just kind of take a look at this and see what we can. It all began the moment I laid eyes on him. He touched my hand and the sky turned magic blue, and I was falling. All right, let's put this on master bus. Once he kissed my face, the world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody loves you. Don't it make you feel good? All right, so if we're looking at, so if we had our audio, this representation be very kind of more vertical. This would kind of indicate that we have kind of phase issues going on. So, and we can kind of see where we are kind of in our panning spectrum. So if this is again kind of very, going up and down this way and very narrow, that would indicate that there is kind of phasing issues to be concerned about. And we could also kind of get an idea of like what frequencies are going on in the panning. So we can see our low frequencies. Then you have kind of the correlation. This is kind of where you want to be. But let's say if I take the drums and let's see if I knock the drums out of phase, if you see this. So I'll just take my drums here and let's a couple of different things going on in a loop. But when you see this kind of be a bit more a lot of activity, you see that the relationship between the phase, so you want it to be pretty spherical, and if you see this kind of going up kind of diagonally, that's when you're going to see kind of phase issues with that. All right, just seeing different comments on NVIDIA drivers, and all right, let's go through. Okay, so we have a question. Could you please explain the auto color tracks? All right, so we'll do a new project. Okay, so a lot of times, I see a lot of people, there's some different preferences that you can utilize. So if we come over to track and mix console channel colors under user interface, a lot of times people may just use like default color. So if we add tracks, we'll come here and it's kind of this gray. So I see a lot of people, have like lots of tracks that are gray. And that's fine. And some people will go, oh, I love how your colors look in your Cubase. What did you do? It's like, I just used colors. So the one that I like to use as far as preferences is to, if you want it to be the same color, you could use the previous track, but I generally have mine set to use previous track color +1. And this way, if I go to add, let's say, 7 tracks, the colors will be automatically populated. Now, if these are all drums and I wanted these to all be the same color, you could hit Alt-Shift-S. No, not that. It's Control-Shift-S. And you could see kind of like, different preset colors that you're able to do, but you could just grab, your paint tool here and just say, I want all these tracks to be that color. So like a lot of times I may just have it automatically choose to do in the preferences to use previous track color +1, and that just automatically increments it. And then I may go back and kind of, assign common colors for, common instruments. So vocals, 1 color, guitars, 1, keys, 1, stuff like that. So. Okay, just reading through different comments. So. All right, so we see Lawrence Cook from Rhode Island. Welcome to the Hangout. All right, about a YDP 735 Yamaha Digi piano to use as a MIDI controller, but the latency is too high. But same with Ableton, no latency. Tried compensation delay, but still a bit of latency. What to do? So generally, the latency isn't, is going to be caused by plugins that are in your system. So when you do the constrained delay compensation, if that affected the latency, that's a good sign. But just because, and you may, I'm not sure what buffer you're using, and if you're using the YDP 735 as a USB controller, or if you're using it as if you're going like a 5-pin DIN MIDI cable out to another interface. But if so, those are some things. If you could share that, Tanmay, it would be helpful. All right, good to see Captenergy Music on a Hangout. All right, good to see Sable Winters on a Hangout. All right, and we have Sable Winters wants people, or Jazz Dude wants people to hit the like button. All right. So we have a question. Hey, Greg, is there any way to randomize quantization and or velocities to make MIDI instruments more real? So, if you wanted to, you could come directly to, I'll just, if you go to under, for MIDI tracks, I'll just add a quick instrument track here. Okay, and once you go to Midi Modifiers, there's a lot of, you could randomize the velocities. So you have, you'd randomize pitch, position, velocity or length of notes. A lot of times, if I'm in a particular drum part, so let's say if I want, like hi-hats are always kind of the dead giveaway in a lot of programmed drum parts. So let's say, someone did like that on their hi-hat and you wanted to randomize the velocities. You could also do this with the logical editor quite easily. So you can say, I want to take, let's say value 2. So just come here, we'll just say value 2, which is the velocity, and we want to take value 2 and set it to random values between, let's say, 70 and 110. So now when I just come here, I hit apply for all, I'll just select this part. If I did this, all right, so let me just say note. So I'm just going to say value 2 is inside range 0 and 127. So now I'll come over here, hit apply, and so I'll just, oh, sorry, let me just change this to say type is equal to note. Oh, I'm choosing delete instead of transform. Sorry. All right, so we'll say type is equal to notes, and we're going to say value 2 set to random values between 70 and 110. And you could obviously change those values there. And then it'll just automatically randomize your velocities just like that. All right, so you see it seems to be snowing all over the country. So it's snowing in Montana, according to Mark Rabin. All right, good to see John Barry from Old Hampshire and Old England. So, okay, so I see just a question from Gareth. Where do you set the high DPI? So on the Windows platform, if you go to Preferences, it'll be under General. So it's not on the Mac, but you could now, so just kind of come over there and you'll see Enable High DPI. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, just trying to find my spot again. Sorry about that. All right, so I may have lost a couple questions. Sorry about that. But I just saw a question about, I think it was about Nuendo working with Audio Kinetics Wise. So I think that, there's the connection, and, we're still working closely with Audio Kinetic for that. So I haven't, I just downloaded the latest version of Wise, so I don't anticipate any changes with that. But if you want to ask the question again, sorry, just kind of fell off of my chat screen. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments. Thanks for all the great comments. And again, check out, we will be doing our little Zoom session if you want to meet in person or virtually in person. Okay, so we have a question. I don't know how to add my microphone so I can record voiceover songs. Any help? So if you want to, so if your microphone is connected into your audio interface, so how you determine which audio interface Cubase is using is you can come right over here to Studio menu to Studio Setup, and then you click on your VST audio system. You could define your audio interface directly here. So many times, like I'm using a Steinberg UR24C, and I could connect a microphone directly into that. You may also have different scenarios where if it's a USB microphone, you may just come over here and you'll see like I have, different USB audio codecs, and if I plugged in a USB mic that I have, it would just show up here. So once we tell Cubase where to look, what device that the audio is being recorded from, you then go to the Studio menu to Audio Connections, and you'll see an Inputs tab. And we want to tell which input or your USB mic to define what your input is here. Once we go to an audio track, we can add an audio track, and then you'll see the physical inputs or the inputs that you have defined in your inputs right here, and then you could set that and then hit record. So let us know if that works for you. So I just see a question. It's Cubase 11 version, right? Yeah, that's what we're running is Cubase 11. Okay. But we'll answer questions on previous versions as well. All right, hang on. My son's knocking on the door. Bear with me just a second. I think his school's over. I'll be right back. Okay, my son's weekend has started, so he's happy. All right, hang on just one second. Sorry. All right, sorry about that. All right. All right, so question. Hi there. Is it possible to make a track preset with external VST plugins? The only plugins that show up for me are the stock plugins. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I will come over here. Let's get to inserts and say external plugins. So I just have something kind of routed. Okay, so I'm going to save a track preset. Okay, then I'm going to go to a new project. Let me just get rid of this particular track. Yep. So it looks like the track version saved with that, but realize that you could only kind of use that external processor. You can only use that external processor once. I'll just test it one more time. So let's do new project. So if you're, using that 2 or 3 times, so I'm just going to, just test it on a. Yep, so that's automatically saved, but realize that, if you wanted to add that to a project that already had that external effects processor, that may not, that won't work because it can only be used once to get the audio in and out of. So, but it looks like it works fine. So I see question. I have a question. Why do I have only 4 options for send effects on each channel? Older version had 8. So I'm not sure which version of Cubase you had, but each, I think maybe Cubase Elements might have 8 sends, but make sure that you don't have Q sends turned on. Because if the Q sends, you only have 4, but make sure that you're in the sends tab, but there's 8 sends. So if you're in, I think Cubase Artist or Cubase Pro, I think have 8 sends. So if you're in Cubase Pro, you should have 8 sends, but make sure that you don't have Q sends clicked here. So it's 1 mouse click, and that may be why you think there's only 4. So. Okay. Okay, so just reading some different comments about effect sends. Okay, so question: when signing, recording, or singing, hearing, recording effects, not recording them, you have to be at super low latency, right? Like 64 milliseconds. Here, delay when using QMix. Could Greg show us how to set QMix with effects? So the effects will still have. The effects themselves can still cause latency. So, realize that when you're dealing with, different Q mixes, that those Q mixes, we could think of latency as almost like a tax, if you will. So, you'll have to kind of pay it some way when you start using effects. Now, a lot of interfaces like the Steinberg UR interfaces will have the audio just kind of built directly, it has a DSP built in. And this is some of the, the advantages like of the Steinberg UR series. Because if we wanted to, I'll just turn off my control room quickly here for this. That you could actually have the different hardware options that you see kind of in, so this way, like the audio interface itself can have all of the DSP and you could access it when it's configured directly from the inspector. And that way you don't have any latency. But generally using plugins for tracking will cause latency, and it's just kind of, one of those like physics things. So that could be tricky for it to work with. So, if that's important to you, really kind of check out audio interfaces that have built-in DSP so that you could have the monitoring, without additional latency during your monitoring stage. Okay, so we have a question. Hey there, can I ask if there will be an update on the MIDI device panel or part of it, if there's planned anything? So I haven't heard of any plans for that, but I haven't asked specifically with it on that features, but I will ask in my next discussions. All right, so we see from Taylor Sapp, are there plans to provide a triplet grid in the project and editor windows? So if we have, so let's go ahead and take a look. So let's say if I just, let's say I have my grid set to, let's say, use Quantize, and I want this to be quarter note triplets. So now as I move, it's snapping to quarter note triplets already. So it may not show it on a grid, but as you move, it's actually snapping it directly to quarter note triplets. So we have one quarter note here. So we have, one, so you could just, come over here and snap it to the quantize value already. So, you could do it. So you may not see it on a grid. The sample editor is different, unfortunately, but the MIDI editor will give you kind of that same capability. All right, so question, if we load effects, if we load plugins on input channels, are those effects automatically printed to the recordings? Yes. So, if you wanted to embed, an effect and burn it, apply it to the recording, you could put that on the input channel. So you could just simply put down an input channel and that effect is automatically applied to the recording during the recording process. So I see from JVI, Greg, apologies if this was already asked. After updating Cubase Pro 11.0.1, the bug were removed from list does still not work. Am I the exception? So I couldn't get it to work on mine either. So, but I'll kind of pass that along again. All right. I see. How can I convert Cubase 5 to Chance? So I'm not sure what Chance is. So let's see. Okay, so I just see from, I think we covered this already, but resolve missing files at the start of every project is a pain. Can I turn it off, or how do I resolve them? So, if you're starting from a template, which, generally is what happens, but you may also have, if you have samples that are missing, like content. So, if you have content files that are missing, you may want to just go to the Steinberg Library Manager and make sure that you have, all of the Cubase content, make sure that you have that installed. So if you deleted something, and then you're getting a message that, you are doing this, but you could also go into your Steinberg Library Manager and just choose to remove the association with, so let's say if you tried out a plugin or a trial version and it has additional content or sound files, go into your Steinberg Library Manager and just choose to remove and see if that makes a difference for you, Bob. All right. All right, so question 2, is there a possibility to recognize the chord from incoming MIDI notes and route them to one note for output? I'm talking about a reversed quarter for MIDI. So let's see if I want to, I'm not sure if it's like a real-time thing that's needed, but let's see if we can maybe do it in the project, in the input transformer. Okay, so let's say if we want to. Okay, so I think, just check my routing one more time. Okay, so now it's probably. Okay, so let's take a look at this and see if we could. All right, so is there a possibility to recognize the chord from incoming MIDI notes and route them to one note for output? So if you wanted to limit the polyphony on input, so let's transform or filter. So you can enable this, and we could say type is equal to note, and so say if I just wanted to filter notes, so I'm not sure. So, there. So you might be able to do it with this, but I'm not sure why if you can tell me the use case of why you want to play chords and then turn it into a single note as opposed to playing the single note, that could be helpful for me. Maybe a use case for that. All right, so question from Pablo. Can several actions be combined in the project logical editor to arrive at a result and then turn it into a macro? So what you could do is anytime that you have a project logical editor set up here, so say if I wanted to do this, one thing that a lot of people miss is, let's say if we set up a project logical editor, within the project logical editor, you could trigger a macro as well. And that macro could include other project logical editors. So if you wanted to do like three, let's say you're doing 3 different project logical editors, if we choose to come over here, we could just say, okay, I want to go to my key commands And let's do a new macro. So we could, hide the macros. We'll show the macros. And now we could come over here and say, and then you'll see on all the presets that you've made in the project logical editor can actually show up here under process project logical editor. So you can say, okay, I want to add that function. Let's delete all empty parts. And so as we want to, just come over here, you could stack kind of multiple events kind of within, within a particular project logical editor. So these could all be assigned. Or within the project logical editor, you could trigger a macro that could execute other project logical editor presets. So I just did kind of a big one for a composer like that this week. Okay. If the plugin manager says a plugin is not a valid plugin, is there a way to load it? All my Kong audio instruments got hosed with Nuendo 11. So if we wanted to, if it's in the blacklist, what you could do is just kind of come over here and so let's go to the Vst Plug-In Manager. I don't think I have any that show up in the blacklist. So, or the block list rather. But if you wanted to come here, make sure that you don't have the, if it's a 32-bit and 64-bit install that, that you have, make sure that you just don't install the 32-bit. If there's a VST2 and a VST3, it could be reading the VST2 or VST3, but you could come over here, and let me see which one this is. So say if I wanted to come here, I think if you wanted to just kind of, sometimes you can have the ability to actually reactivate. But if it's not a valid plugin, like this is kind of something a little nefarious, but if it's not a valid plugin, I would make sure that that you have the 64-bit version installed. And I probably assume you do if you have Nuendo 11. So. All right, question. How would one do multi-track warping in Cubase? As far as I know, it's not a feature. Can't imagine why, though. Is there a workaround somehow? So really, currently there isn't multi-track warping. I know that many of the product planning people are, it's they're very aware of people's desire for that. So, so hopefully we'll see that in future versions. So. Okay. Okay, so just see a quick comment. Not sure if you understand what I'm trying to do. I want to, for example, save a track preset with contact and some effects so I don't have to create that track over and over again. So let's go ahead and take a look and do something very similar. So let's say, I'll just do a quick Hallian here. So the principle should be the same. All right, so let's say I just wanted to come here, then let's put in And let's say I wanted to put a delay on that for some unknown reason, but I will come over here and we'll do our track presets. So, and we could do this with, our different instruments. So if I wanted to, let's just open up the audio editor. So we could do this with inserts. That'll be saved within the track preset. So let's say I want to put a mono delay on it, and we'll make this a quarter note delay. So as I okay, so if I now want to save this as a track preset, I will come here. Let's save track preset. Call it Jan 29th Hangout Hallian. Okay, so let's just go ahead and close this. And I'll remove that track. Let's add our track preset. All right, so I'm just gonna try saving that preset one more time. Okay, and just come over here to track presets. All right, so here's my January 29th. I'll just drag that over. And now when we open this up, it will be my Hallian with a delay on it. So I could have this as my track preset. And then I could have this as my original track. And if I wanted to get rid of both of them and say I was starting from scratch, I could come right over here, remove both of those tracks like so, and just drag over that track preset that I've made, and you're all good to go. So that'll work with other VST instruments in the same way. Okay, it says I want to do a Cubase 5 conversion to Cubase 11 Pro. Will my old USB-E license work, or will the download utility work? I'm lost. Peace, give me clarity, thank you. So all you have to do is, if you purchase the update from Cubase 5 to Cubase 11 Pro, your USB-E licenser will work. Then you'll get probably a digital access code. Once you enter that in to the into the Steinberg download assistant, so you'll be able to just do that. So we'll just come over here. I'll open up the download assistant quickly. And so it could be, and then the e-license program. So you could just enter your download access code here. It'll take you straight to the Cubase. You download it in the eLicenser program. All you have to do is enter the code that you'll get once you register. And so you can use the same USB eLicenser, and you know, it's pretty simple once you do it. So you just simply buy it, install, you know, do the authorization, and your Cubase 5 is still intact and running, no problems. So, and you'll have Cubase Pro 11 with all the great new features. Okay. So question, how is it possible to transpose an audio file and have it play back faster or slower accordingly like it does in a sampler when playing different keys? So yeah, we could do this. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So say I will come over here, and it could depend upon the algorithm that you use. So if you want to do kind of like more very speed type tasks. So let's say if I come here, I could place all of my audio recordings into musical mode. So when I go to my pool, we could see that these will all have a tempo stamp and all be placed into musical mode. And I'm going to select all the tracks here. And depending, we could switch the algorithm. So right now I could play back at any tempo. And as we do this, it's going to automatically stay at the same pitch. But if I select all of these and we switch their algorithm to tape mode, so I'll just come here and let's select all the files. And I'm just going to select Elastic, and I'll just say tape. So now when I change the tempo, it's changing the pitch just like an analog tape machine. So I want to go to 108, 122, 99. So that way you could actually have it, you know, and that's to mimic kind of like very speed recording. All right. Okay, so we see from J.K. Greg, just wanted to say thanks for answering my questions, the live stream. I bought a copy of Cubase 11 Pro today. I'm coming from Ableton. Congratulations. Welcome to the Cubase family. We hope you enjoy it. And we're glad to hear that. Hope to see you on many more Hangouts in the future. Okay. Okay, so you see a question, what is the difference between what you show here and the Cubase LE that came with the DI I bought? So, you know, as you kind of get, you know, with the LE is kind of a light version, so it has kind of scaled back functionality, but a lot of the core functionality is still there. So I kind of show predominantly the Pro version, which you could always upgrade to from your Cubase LE. But a lot of the basic stuff, you know, moving and editing that you see me do will be available. But if you have like, you know, if you say, is this feature that you just showed, is that in LE? I could answer it for you. But there are pretty extensive comparison charts as well. So I'm going to enter in the Zoom link for people that may want to join after the Hangouts. I'm going to paste that in again. So if you wanted to copy that. So let me just switch computers. So I just put that in again. So we'll be doing that maybe in about 35 minutes. So look forward to seeing a lot of people. All right, so I know we had questions that were sent in advance, and we had a couple things that we didn't get to last time. So Jan from CubaseIndex.com, we want to make sure we answer his questions because he does such a great service for us, and we so appreciate him compiling a website where you could search for all the topics that we've covered in these Hangouts. So I think there's a lot of them. So, so again, kudos to Jan for doing that. But he wanted to know how to make an expression map from scratch and kind of what an expression map allows us to do. So let's take a look. Okay, so if we're kind of starting off here, let's say I have a particular instrument. Okay, so, and like this is a choral instrument. And a lot of instruments and samples that you get now, they'll have different keys that will actually, just see if I get my key switch. Get my octave set here. Sorry, my keyboard controller is a little. Okay. Okay, so in this preset, like when I hit, just trying to get the key switch here, sorry. All right. So when I hit this note, this A, it sounds like an A, but if I hit this note here, and we can see the very bottom pink notes, it switches to like an and then if I hit the C, it switches to an O. So I could take one particular note so that's a pretty typical scenario for working with our key switches. So if we want to be able to kind of switch between these, because what these are actual MIDI notes that trigger the different samples. So we hit this note. If you look at the bottom left hand, so it's not really MIDI notes, but it's a MIDI message that tells the instrument to play back different sets of samples. So to be able to work with this, what we want to do is go to your MIDI to your expression map setup. And I'll just kind of start from scratch here. So we'll just come here. We're going to add a new expression map and we'll make some new slots. And I think we'll put this, I think it's A-1 for our note. All right, and then we'll have B-1 for our slot. And now I will add, and depending on how many articulations or kind of variations that your instrument has, you could just kind of enter these in. Now, as we do this, we could also just say we're going to take this MIDI note and we'll come over here and say, okay, A1, and we're going to give it just a quick articulation. So I'm going to say this is going to be when we hit this particular note, we'll call it, and we'll just say make a custom articulation, and we'll just call this A. Okay. And so we come here, so we're going to add our articulation there. So now we have one of them done. And so let's go ahead and kind of do the same for the others. And so the articulation, we'll just do custom. So when we do B, that's more of a So I'll type this correctly. Okay, and we hit C0. That's our O's. All right. Okay. So we'll just Okay, so now once we kind of created the map, and a lot of times these maps will automatically be created by the manufacturer of the libraries, but we could now choose to, let's go ahead and we'll save this. So we'll call this cubaseindex.com. Okay, so now we'll go to our expression map and we'll go to our cubaseindex.com. And as we listen to it, I can now just come over here, and as I would record, let's say I'll solo this so as not to destroy everyone. All right. So say we have 3 notes. So if I wanted that to go A, O, I would now just, instead of having to remember what those articulations were, I could just come right here and just switch those particular notes. So as we play, so that's how you could kind of switch what sounds are actually being played by the sampler. And then, so that is kind of keeping track of all of the different information. So that's how you could kind of make your own expression map kind of starting from the start. So you just go to your expression map setup, and you could make these, more complex. You could make it also, instead of note on, do program or controller changes as well. But so that's a quick overview how to get that started. All right. So I see, I was looking for a question. I was looking for a comfortable way to show the lyrics on the timeline. The best solution I found currently is abusing or using with an AB in a parenthesis, abusing the arranger track for it. I see my might see attached picture. Okay, what is the best practice for, okay. So, what I often do is I have like a marker track, and I will have this marker track that's kind of set up for lyrics in my song. And what this is going to allow me to do is, if I, wanted to, look at different markers, like I say, let's look at the lyrics. Because a lot of times I find that like when I'm tracking with, different vocalists, they may say, yeah, um, when they say somethings, yeah, go to where they say somethings because they're thinking about the words. And here I could have all the lyrics kind of just laid out in a marker. So I could just say, okay, we're going to go right there to that particular marker phrase. And this will allow us to jump. Now with version 11, we could also, as we're working, like we're doing MIDI editing, one of the cool things is you have the ability of showing your global tracks. So you could see kind of the MIDI overlaid with the lyrics here directly in the marker track. So you could say, as someone is playing, you could just navigate quickly to the words and be able to just say, okay, when I say we can't go that part, like, I need a bar number measure, you could find that marker and just navigate. And once you have the markers here also, you could just, hit your left and right keys to navigate and just kind of start playing directly from that particular spot. So I would tend to use marker tracks for lyrics as opposed, and I often use the arranger track for defining the verse, chorus, different aspects of song arrangements. Okay, so we had a question, I think this is from John Costigan. What's the best practice for mapping different samples based on velocity? In other words, as the velocity increases, the sample would be changed to reflect tone and smack note number, mostly snares, but others as needed. So most of the time when we're working, we'll have, let's say if we have just a range of snare drums here, and let's say I have just an instance of Groove Agent. So Groove Agent works really well for this. So a lot of times what I do, like when I'm tracking a drummer, they're kind of so well trained from sound checks that they will often, it's like, okay, hit your drum really soft and get it louder slowly, So if you wanted to take a drum, we could drag it directly onto a pad in Groove Agent. And as I play it, it'll get louder. And it will increase and decrease based upon the velocity by default. But let's say if I had a number of snare samples. So I said to drummer, hit your snare drums, soft and get louder, and you just record them. You could take those different snare recordings. So let's say I have 8 snare recordings here. So I'll quickly select these like so, and then I'm just going to drag them onto a pad. And then we have the option here where it could switch between different velocities. We could layer, we could have it be random. And for each of the values that you select, you could adjust the velocity range. So as you come over here, you could say, okay, I want this to go to these velocity values and this. So as we do this, we can now have 8 different snare samples. And it will just switch between these depending upon the velocity. So, Groove Agent and is a perfect tool for that. And if you're like, okay, I just wanted to layer all those, I could just say, okay, let's just layer. And it's going to hit all 8 snares every single time. Or you could do random. So every time you hit the pad, it will just kind of play back different velocities, or you could do round robins as well, so it'll just kind of cycle through. So some different options there. Okay, so I just see in another tool we had something called consolidated track that's used when multiple cuts and you want to make it into a solid single take. Does Cubase have something similar? Or is that normalized track I often hear about on the Hangouts? So if you wanted to, it's often kind of what people deem kind of a consolidate function. So let's say if I'm here and I had like a number of different audio files and I've done cuts and edits in them. So let's say just have some voice and I want to turn this series of 4 audio files into one contiguous audio file. I could select this, go to audio and choose bounce selection. So I'll just choose to replace. And now we have one nice happy part that's kind of the, the of all the different edits, the 4 different audio files, all kind of just, mashed together in one single entity. All right. And also Johnny Diaz, who's on a Hangout, says, okay, I guess he's having problems with his offline processing, that it isn't sounding. He says, I see 2 tiny arrows in the corners of the clip, meaning is there, but it doesn't get to sound. Could it be an internal routing issue or control room setting? So I'll do this kind of, if I wanted to apply effects to this particular file. So let's say, remember me. So let's say I wanted to take that particular vocal part and just add a delay. So I'm going to just select it with my range tool and go to direct offline processing. So I will choose to come over here and I'm just going to go to plugins and let's add a mono delay. Let's make it a quarter note. And I just have this set to auto apply. So now we listen to it. That's just going to automatically. Remember me. So that just kind of automatically applies it. So, if I just wanted to undo that, so we can see that little icon, I believe that's indicating, I'll delete. And as we do that, make sure again that you have auto apply turned on. If that's not turned on, that you click on apply here and see if you do that. And let me know if that helps. Okay. So question, why is it sometimes that the sync point of the audio file changes? Sometimes I find the sync point is in the middle of the file instead of at the start. I haven't manually changed anything. It just happened automatically. So sometimes if you're not familiar with like this concept of the sync point, we'll take a look at it here. Okay, so let's say we have a sound, and I think this sounds a good example of it. So we'll just play this. So let's say, like we have an impact right here, and we want that impact to actually snap to the bar or to the events. So when I'm here, I don't want the beginning of the file where we have that little build up, but I want this particular, like that impact point. So what I see some people do is accidentally turn on the snap point just by clicking on this icon. I've seen that, and I've also seen people inadvertently. So let's say if I have this turned off, but I ran into a customer that actually, just manually put the snap point to cursor. Like when they did a bounce selection inadvertently, they just kind of were one off. So at this point, if you mean to hit the bounce selection, I say snap point to cursor. Now it's that point that is snapping within the event. And if you come here, just like let's say to the main audio event, and we have this turned on, we could adjust the snap point here, and that's where kind of the sync, where it'll be synced, and we see this kind of line, so that is what kind of snaps to the grid and not the beginning of the file. So you could always turn this on and then be able to adjust the snap point back to the origin. But I've seen people just turn it on by accident when they kind of miss the bounce selection function. Okay, so we had a question. I'm using Cubase 11 Pro. I've been using Cubase for decades now. I'm a bedroom producer, but since 98, Cubase is the DAW I use. I'm trying to automate the decay, sustain, release on sampler track, but I can't, even though when I send the buttons to quick track control, it doesn't seem to do the job. I want to open and close the decay on hi-hats, for example. So let's take a look at it. So say we have our sampler track set up here. So let me and we'll come over here to our sampler track. So I think the example is for hi-hats. Okay, so let's say I have this selected and I now have my attack, decay, sustain. And it may seem like they're not doing too much, but you may have to, one is to make sure that the filter is turned on and try adjusting the LFO. And then you could actually kind of see some of the changes as we come over here. But you may have to just turn on the LFO for it to actually, so if I want, but it seems to be kind of controlling as expected. But you try, making sure that the LFO is on and see if that kind of, makes a difference. And then once you're there, you could adjust the frequency and, see, if that does the trick for you. But, try to make sure that the LFO is turned on because those functions are part of the LFO to change the sounds. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to lock the position of an event on the project window without locking it out from other edit functions? I'm worried I'll accidentally nudge an event out of position, so I would like to lock it in place while still having full edit functionality of the track and the event. So all you have to do, and this may not be activated by default, so if we want it to come over here, so we could select this, and if you go to like the little info line area here, you'll see a function for lock. So if you don't see it, just kind of click in the little settings cogwheel or gearbox and just make sure that lock is turned on. So now that if I have this event, I can move it freely. But if I want to lock the position of it, now it's not going to nudge, and I can still do edits and move different parameters and cut parts, but I can't adjust the position. So you'll see a lock field here in the info line, and you could just lock the size, the position, other size plus other. So, so different parameters, or for it not to lock. We also had a question on when doing backups in Nuendo 11, can all the backup projects be saved to a backups folder? So currently, like when we do when backups are automatically turned on, and this is on by default in the preferences, that it's going to be under general. I think it's set to 10 minutes by default. And let's go over here to, let's say, my projects, but they will all be kind of actually stored, so all the backup files will be stored here, so they don't go into their own backups folder. I know some people have made like scripts and will put it into a backups folder or manually do it. but they're kind of saved at the same level just so people know where they're at when they need to access it. Hi, Greg. Hope all is well. I just recently started building a vocal booth, and I need to know, is there an app I can use to control Cubase from inside the vocal booth? Is there a good product I can use to control Cubase? Don't want to take computer inside vocal booth. Need to be able to control volume of headphones and mic without putting interface inside booth. So I know a lot of people that have done, I have a friend in Nashville, and he has it set up for like 6 or 7 people in his studio, and each musician has like a Cubase screen and a keyboard and a mouse so that they could do stuff. And I think he has the wireless, keyboard and mouse, and that's pretty extensive. A lot of people would, for an app, get Cubase IC Pro, and then you could just simply do your headphone mixes, do a quick mix, be able to trigger key commands, your transport functions, and that's really like a perfect use for that. I know some people will also have, other tools or, like screen sharing on a tablet. That's another thing that people often use and kind of do it over Wi-Fi. But, Cubase IC Pro is a great app, for that particular purpose. Okay. So we had a question. Is it possible to create cinematic ensembles in Cubase? I want to play, say, 4 samples from 4 different libraries at the same time on one key of the keyboard. Yes, I know you can highlight 4 or 5 tracks and do it like that, but I want to be able to create multiple ensembles with multiple libraries and have them in a template so I don't have to highlight tracks to do this. Is this possible? And could you do a video to explain how this could be done? So, what a lot of people do is, like, let's say, if you're doing this, so let's say we have like an orchestral, I put like a number of different tracks in folders. And this folder comprises of, let's say it's going to have a piano. It'll have strings, and let's say I want to come over here and also brass, and let's go ahead and let's say winds, I think. So many people I know will just kind of put these into, and put that into a folder, and also just so now you don't have anything. Now you click here, it's one mouse click and everything is in the folder. If I hit record, it's going to, so if I do this right, so let's say I just recorded on my folder track. It's now recorded that information into each of the tracks of the piano, strings, brass. And I know some people that will also go through, and if you have, let's say multiple instrument tracks, that you could link these particular tracks in, different. So let's say if I have, multiple instrument tracks here. And then, if these are even kind of spread out, you could choose to create a link group, and this could include record enable, so that as soon as, one of these tracks is record enabled, that they're all record enabled. And you could do it like that as well. All right, so we also had a question last time about Ambisonics. So let's take a look at that. And for this to hear it properly, you're probably going to need headphones, just FYI. So Ambisonics is going to allow us to do some like almost spherical 360-degree audio. It's often kind of used for game stuff. And to kind of set it up, what you need to do is to come over to your VST connections. And you want to, on the outputs tab, just create an Ambisonics output. So this will be under Add Bus. You'll see more, and you got first, second, or third order Ambisonics inside of Cubase. You don't have to set up all the routing. And once that's done, you want to make sure that this is going to be set as the main mix. Once that is turned on, and we want to probably come over here, and this works best with headphones. But if you go to Preferences and go to your control room, you want to say Use Phones Channel as Preview Channel. So let's go ahead and check that. And here, once we have this, you'll see the VST Ambi decoder kind of show up here. So we're going to choose to monitor with headphones. And again, as I play this, it probably won't have the effect. I'm not sure how it's going to translate over the Hangout, but you'd probably need to have headphones on. But let's say if I have my video window here, so I'll just hit F8 and we kind of play along. And let's say this is panning. And as the camera perspective is panning, I want that stream to actually kind of move over to the right. And you could have like a bird flying over. And let's say I want dogs to kind of bark behind me and walk from one side to the other. So to kind of do this, what you could do is I'll just kind of, let's say I'll take one file. So I'll just take this stream here, and then your panner will just kind of turn into, you can see kind of the top view of the panner and the rear view. And this could all just be kind of automated. So you could just, as the camera is panning in the scene, you can say, okay, that stream is now behind us to the right. And as we kind of keep going around, we'll see that the original stream is now in front of us. So that will allow you, and then once you're done, you can just simply do your export audio mix down, and it would give you kind of a multi-channel interleave file, and that could be decoded with other ambisonic players. So that's a quick overview. So with that, we're just about out of time. I'm going to paste the Zoom link one more time in the Hangout field. So if you want to join us, we'll do this maybe for like an hour or so. So if people want to meet, I will go ahead and paste that in one more time, and I'll start the Google Hangout. And if you want to kind of go over, on the Zoom Hangout. So we're going to try, if this works, we'll try to do this maybe the last Hangout of every month. So people want to get together and chat and actually see each other, and I could hear all of you speak instead of you just listening to me. You're probably tired of listening to me. And that way we could actually meet, and we'll see how this goes. And just kind of let us know. So I'll go ahead and exit out of my live stream here. I'll go ahead and start the Zoom session. So, and we'll go ahead and I'll get some people in. I'll start my video here. So, and I'll wrap up the Hangout in just a minute, but if you want it to just kind of come over here, you can see kind of the meeting invitation. So if you want to see that, I'll leave that up just for a minute, and hopefully we'll get to see people, and we'll be doing the next hangout on Tuesday. I want everyone to stay safe and healthy, and we will see everyone on Tuesday. Everyone have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all on the Zoom area. I'm just watching the replay, so I'm going to just wait a second so people could pause the video when they see the event invitation if they still need it. But we'll see how this goes, and I'll get the meeting started in just a minute. And with that, I see that it is on. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, and I'll end the Hangout part and start the Zoom part of the meeting. Okay, so I'm going to end this. So we'll see you hopefully on the Zoom area, and I'll see you there in just a moment.